And opinions expressed by the guests and contributors on Conklin and Company are not necessarily those of 13 ABC. Now, Conklin and Company continues with Take 3, commentary and analysis from our panel of political contributors.
Welcome back, everyone. We'll talk the Toledo mayor's race with Tom Troy from The Blade in just a minute. But first, checked in late this past week with our Washington bureau chief, Jacqueline Policastro. All right, Jacqueline, thanks very much for joining us. Boy, it's been a heck of a week in Washington. We're covering a couple of stories that have international and local impact. First, let's talk about this Russian adoption controversy. Vladimir Putin putting an end to the adoption of Russian children based on sanctions from the United States because of civil rights violations. This happening some months ago, and now we have local families who are missing out on their chance to adopt orphans from Russia. You hosted some local families and watched them meet lawmakers there this past week. Give us a feel for what that was like.
Yeah, Lee, I had 3 local families from Toledo coming here to Washington, and they met with lawmakers for an entire day. It was really an intense day. They had a 9 o'clock press conference. Then they met with half a dozen lawmakers. They delivered thousands of letters, and each parent that I talked to said that it was an experience that they never thought that they would be part of. They really worked very hard, and I can tell you that from covering Congress, to be able to get 6, 7 members of Congress to talk to you in one day really is a big feat. And Senator Rob Portman is taking the lead on this. He actually had a letter, and within one day he was able to get every lawmaker from Ohio to sign on to it. And he's not only doing that, but he's trying, like you mentioned, to get President Obama to sit down with Vladimir Putin and talk about this. He's also talking to Secretary of State Kerry, trying to get him involved. So it was a really big day of lobbying for these families.
Talk about those families, the emotional journey that they've been on for months now, and you saw that firsthand.
I really did, and I think the members of Congress really saw that as well. I can tell you, one of the mothers, she sent me a text message when she was flying back to Toledo, and she said, all of a sudden, all of this just hit me, and I kind of had to decompress and cry about it. I mean, these families knew these children. It wasn't like they were hoping to adopt a child. These children came to Toledo, spent several weeks with the families. They feel like the children are theirs, part of their family, and now all of a sudden they're not able to adopt, and they don't even have communication, Lee, with the children. So these aren't small babies. Some of these children are 6, 7 years old. So it's a form of almost rejection for them. And the families are just really worried that they're not going to be able to connect. And that's why they made this trip. They reached out to lawmakers in such a big way. And
we saw a stack of letters. I believe you said 8,000 letters from all across the country joining this Toledo team in force.
Absolutely. They actually reached out using social media, and they got people from every state across the country to write letters on their behalf. And then they printed all of those letters and brought them to lawmakers here. I mean, I saw them carrying these big boxes through the halls of Congress and, just dropping those stacks of letters for the lawmakers. And I think that definitely matters. That's why especially congressmen are here, to bring that message from their local districts. And I think it really gave them a chance to see how much this resonates with people all over the country.
And we'll see what happens there. Of course, adopting a child, there's a lot of patience involved there, and it's going to take a little bit more, perhaps a lot more for these families, but working to get it done. We certainly wish them the best of luck. You bet. All right, let's move to the IRS scandal now. We have a new interim chief of the IRS as of late this past week. You've been covering this thing in D.C. What's the tenor there, the mood here, this IRS scandal that has really rocked the administration?
The first thing I can tell you is that everyone is talking about it. It's not just Republicans, it's Republicans and Democrats, and they want answers. From the president, he says that he's angry. You saw on Friday that House members met and they're talking about this. Then on Tuesday, senators are going to be talking about this. The main thing I can tell you, Lee, is this is not going to go away.
And what about... you talked about Rob Portman, Senator Brown. I mean, have you had a chance to talk to all of our representatives, Marcy Kaptur, Jim Jordan, about this story breaking this past week? Have you had a chance to connect with our representatives?
I have. I can tell you that Senator Portman has been involved with the IRS since the 90s, and he told me that last year he wrote a letter to the IRS asking them about the beginning of this scandal, and he says the IRS wrote back to him telling him there was no problem. And so he's been meeting with people from Ohio who have come here to Washington that say that they were part of this scandal. When it comes to Senator Sherrod Brown, he says that anyone involved in this specific targeting should lose their job. I haven't had a chance to talk with every single member of Congress from our area just yet, but I know that I haven't talked to any member of Congress who says, hey, this is okay. So Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. They think that this needs to be handled. And I've heard a lot of people say they think people need to be fired and in some cases, maybe even sent to jail.
Jacqueline Policastro, the only 13 ABC, or I should say the only Washington bureau chief that works for this television market. We appreciate you joining us once again from Washington. Thank you, Jacqueline. All right, 13 ABC Washington bureau chief Jacqueline Policastro brings us back to Tom Troy from the Toledo Blade. And Tom, you've covered some local groups apparently targeted by the IRS. Maybe speak to those.
Well, there's a group in Fremont, a Tea Party group that was, given these very voluminous and onerous requests for information. And what we're being told is that they were extensive requests for information. They might even have been intentionally voluminous in order to delay. That's the suspicion out there. There's a real Ohio flavor to this. The office that reviewed the tax-exempt applications is in Cincinnati, and it was some Ohio Tea Party groups that raised the alarm. It was a year ago, and you heard Jacqueline just say that Portman wrote a letter, he got a letter back, there's no problem at all. He kind of accepted that.
Jim Jordan on this as well,
Jim Jordan
right?
took it a little farther and demanded an audit, and that audit forced the IRS to fess up to what was going on.
And more heads may be rolling as we speak here.
Right.
We heard another top official late Friday was also leaving the IRS. Okay, we have that situation, and now let's talk about the mayor's race. D. Michael Collins jumping in once again, made it official, but we talked about it last Sunday before it became official. One of the worst kept secrets since Anita Lopez officially announced that she was running. So what does this do for the tenor of the race and the future of the campaign here for all the candidates involved?
Well, there's been a lot of armchair political expert discussion. Who does he take away from? Some would say that he takes away from the mayor because they both kind of have a Republican flavor to their positions and to their supporters. So some conservative, independent, Republican type voters might go to D. Michael Collins. At the same time, he's a safety guy. He was the president of the police union for 10 years. So he's a union guy. So he's going to compete with Anita Lopez for those safety unions. In the end, is it going to be enough votes to keep Michael Bell out of the primary? I don't think so by any stretch. Might it be enough votes pulled away from Anita Lopez to keep her from advancing? I think that'd be a little bit unlikely. I think Mike Collins is going to have to prove to us that he can be as much of a come-from-behind guy as mayor as he was city councilman. All
right, and all this goes back to the relationship between council and the mayor, which was at loggerheads again this week over the funding allocation of grant money
for homelessness.
For homelessness shelters, the Aurora House, and other great organizations facing tough times because of the lack of funding. But council said, no, we want to reallocate this money. The mayor's office said, no, we have the final say. Who does have the final say here?
I think in the end, the final say is the mayor's, because HUD tells the city, you got $6 million, you tell us how you're going to spend this money, and then we will disperse it to you. It's the mayor's job to sign the document saying how the money is going to be dispersed. Now, in the past, the mayors, Finkbeiner and Ford, have tried to get their council's involvement in it to spread the pain and the glory somewhat. I mean, both Ford and Finkbeiner were members of council at one time. Right. This mayor is a little more, he's more concerned with being mayor, and if they don't want to speak up on time, if they don't give the time in that he feels they didn't make the time to work on it, he's just going to say, it's my job to submit this report, it's your job to say yay or nay to the money, and that's ultimately what happened here.
A lot of wrangling, a lot of tension at Government Center this past week, and it's interesting, you have two of those council members who want to take the mayor's job. The mayor wants to keep it.
That's right.
So fascinating going forward. Tom Troy, as always, thanks very much. Look for that story this morning in the Sunday edition of The Blade, that relationship between the mayor and council. And we'll see all this week on 13 ABC Action News. Make it a great Sunday, everybody. Take care.